Welcome back to the World Zakat Forum webinar series. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Arwa Violaditya and I will be serving as the moderator for today's webinar. I would like to thank you for joining us for this special dialogue regarding the topic of Eid Qurban amid COVID-19 pandemic in practitionary perspectives. As we know, Qurban is an ancient tradition inherited from Prophet Ibrahim, which is the prophetic mass Muhammad, peace be upon him, was then prescribed to be the one of the highly recommended acts or sunnah muakkadah in Islam. As a major annual activity carried out by the Muslims in the world, sacrifices every year not only provide a positive impact in terms of social, but also economic. The need for livestock includes goats, sheep, cattle, and buffaloes in large numbers during sacrifice, which will certainly encourage the economy both in urban areas through the sale and purchase of sacrificial animals, as well as in rural areas where livestock activities are carried out. However, this year, the number of sacrificial slaughtering is predicted to decrease. The decrease is due to the economic impact caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. With the condition of the world economy like this, the ability of people to meet their basic needs of the reduced condition like this also encourages people to save more on expenses, which will lead to less than optimal distribution of wealth. Therefore, the sacrifice in 2020 should be able to become a great momentum for Muslims to contribute more in tackling the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as being a great momentum for spreading Islam. Today, we have two wonderful speakers who will give their perspectives and insights regarding today's topic. Allow me to introduce to you our speakers. Our first speaker is Brother Azim Kidwai, the chairman of National Zakat Foundation. Welcome, Brother Azim.
Thank you.
How are you
Assalamualaikum.
today? Walaikum
Very
salam.
well. Thank you.
Thank you. And for our second speaker, we have Brother Randi Swandaru, the head of Division of Empowerment of BAZNAS RE. Welcome to Brother Randi.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Walaikum salam. How are you today, Brother Randi?
Alhamdulillah, ana bi khair. Alhamdulillah, I'm good.
Alhamdulillah. Now, before we start our session today, I will explain the mechanism of today's session. First, we will explain the topic and we will hear the perspective from both of our respective speakers. Then, we will open a Q&A session. For those at home who would like to ask a question, you may type your question within the chat box in the comments section on YouTube. We will then select one or several of the questions to be asked to the speakers. Now, without further ado, we will start the webinar with perspective and presentations from Brother Azim Kidwai. To Brother Azim, the time is yours.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inna alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Firstly, thank you very much to BAZNAS once again for pulling this forum together. And World Zakat Forum is really an inspiration, I think, for many of us that are trying to look at the Zakat agenda globally, but more so looking at how Zakat fits into a wider Islamic social finance perspective. So first and foremost, it's on behalf of NZF Worldwide and our members, I'd like to say thank you. And secondly, I guess to everybody else that's involved with the call, it's always good to see people engaged and concerned about the maslaha of zakat in this time. So jazakallah khair to fellow participants and the organizers that have made this morning session happen. I don't intend to make a presentation per se, but rather kind of really have a discussion with others that are on the call here about how we should be looking at the reality of Udhiyah and Qurban at this time, where we find there is an increased fear of income, there's an increased fear of uncertainty, and there's an increased fear of just what's going to happen. We're torn between the fear of the disease of coronavirus and the way it's tearing through the world, and we're also in fear of the financial uncertainty it's created because of literally millions of people, I guess, losing their jobs or being in fear that their jobs will soon be terminated. Now, it's at this time that actually we can look at Udhiya and these blessed days of Dhul Hijjah as actually an opportunity. So zakat agencies and others, and I guess especially in the Muslim world as well as the non-Muslim world, we'll find there's millions, yeah, thousands, if not millions, of social welfare organizations that will be dealing with and managing Udhiya. That we should be looking to give confidence to our communities. We should be using this as an opportunity to really give people some pride, some confidence, and give them some happiness at a time where they have concerns and they are full of fear. We remember that the only reason that we perform this act of udhiya and to make the sacrifice of the animals is a ceremony to commemorate the greatest act or the greatest offering of sacrifice by man. And that was by Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him that divine inspiration to sacrifice his son. And for those of us that are parents, I think many of us till today, we can't conceive the integrity, the quality of the monotheism of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, that with his divine inspiration, he was willing to go and put his son down and to slaughter him. You know, this is something that we find sometimes unconceivable. But this was the purity of the Tawheed of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, that he was willing to make that sacrifice. And then from the mercy of Allah, he was saved from having to sacrifice his son for a sacrificial animal. So we should really look at this, that actually this maslaha of Islam, this maslaha of testifying to the one true God involves sacrifice. It's actually nothing to do with your dunya and your dunya reality. It's more to do with your spiritual connection with Allah and what you are willing to do. So actually, this is something that we should think, well, the only reason udhiya matters is that we are trying to revive and follow the tradition of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. And he was willing to make the greatest sacrifice a man can, that of his own flesh and blood, that of his son. And Allah saved him from his mercy with the use of an animal instead. So for us, I think we should take this as an opportunity as zakat agencies and welfare organizations to really revive that message. Unfortunately, today we find that many organizations have fallen into a trap of competing on the price of udhiya and actually competing on how and apologies, it sounds a bit negative, but how cheap that they can deliver the service, you know. And that's why you'll see the dollar rate of the animals differ so much, and there are people competing trying to make it as cheap as possible. But this actually goes away from the very spirit of what we're talking about. That actually what we should be talking about is that as believers we should be seeking to make the best sacrifice we can, and that can leaves it open to whatever our circumstances. So we shouldn't be looking to compete on price. Rather, we should be looking as zakat agencies to inform, to educate, to empower, to inspire our members, our payers, our donors, those people that are looking to us to say, you know, oh people, this is the time to really find strength and to find the barakah that comes from the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and actually actively go out and try and make the best sacrifice possible, to try and do the best that is within our means, remembering that sadaqah doesn't decrease your wealth. And this is very important, that actually giving in the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will only increase your wealth. So if today you are worried about your job, or if today you are relying on your savings, you might be thinking, well, look, I can't afford to make Qurban this year. Or, you know, maybe usually I give 3 animals, this year I will only give 1 animal. Rather, we should turn this on its head. We as zakat agencies and other social welfare organizations should actually say, if you want to have more security in your wealth, you want to have more barakah in your wealth, give a better sacrifice. And if you can give 1 sacrifice easily, try and make a second. And if you can make a second, try and make a third. Because if we do this, we will find that there will be more barakah in the life of our donors, our members, our payers, whatever you wish to call them, and they will find the blessings in their wealth emerge even stronger. So we may start from a point of uncertainty and fear in deciding 1 animal, 2 animals, 10 animals, whatever it is that we think about. Actually, if we turn that into a positive and we educate our people that the gold standard was set by Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, now do what you can to try and improve what you normally do, we can, I'm sure, improve the confidence, make our people happier, make our people's lives with a lot more barakah, because they will inshallah see the reality of that Sadaqah does not decrease your wealth, rather it brings barakah and increase to that. So this is something that I think as a starting paradigm is very important for us to actively communicate together, that let's look at the blessing and the wealth creation that comes from sacrificing an animal, not looking at the physical cost of, $50, $100, $200, $1,000. And I just want to finish this point with I went a few years ago to Sudan to make the Qurban there, and I traveled with some people from the UK, and we'd ordered a few hundred animals that we were planning to sacrifice for people that we were representing in the UK. And I remember we went to the animal markets, and I'm sure, mashallah, many of our viewers and participants would have done that in their lifetimes. And we were buying cows. Yeah, we were buying cows. And I remember in the farm or in the market area where all the animals were, there was a friend of mine who traveled with me. And he is a wealthy person, mashallah. Allah has given him a lot of wealth. And, he has big cars like Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Bentleys, these kinds of things. And in the market, he saw this very large a black bull. Yeah, a black bull. And you could see it just stood out from all the other animals because its coat, its skin was beautiful, it was clean, the animal was big, the animal was strong, it had a very strong demeanor. So this brother, who'd already paid for his Qurban, he looked at me, he said, I must buy this animal. So I said, well, we're already buying the animals. He goes, no, this animal, I must buy this animal. So I said, why? And he said, I must sacrifice this animal for the sake of Allah because this is the best animal here. And I said, SubhanAllah. And I said, what attracts you to this animal? So he said, I drive a Lamborghini. And on the front of the Lamborghini, there is a bull. And it is the most, revered Italian, brand, to have this bull. And he goes, this bull reminds me of that bull that is on my car. And I wish to do the best sacrifice. Whatever the animal cost, I will buy it. So even though he'd already paid for his sacrifice, he saw this animal. I think it was $700-800. It wasn't a cheap animal, and he bought it, and he wanted that sacrifice to be done. And I think this is a spirit that we as zakat agencies and other social welfare organizations really need to develop, educate, inculcate in our supporters that look, do this for the blessing it will bring and out of shukr for what you have, and stop worrying so much about the physical cost, which is a reality. I'm not dismissing that. I know there's a real dollar amount that, or whatever currency amount that needs to be paid, but I think that's our responsibility, and that's what our response should be to COVID, is in this time of fear and uncertainty, let's bring strength and confidence to our people through this tradition of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam.
MashaAllah, thank you very much for your insights and your experiences, Brother Azim. And now, from Brother Randi, is there anything you would like to convey first?
Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin wa bihi nasta'in ala umuri dunya waddin wassalatu wassalamu ala asrofil anbiya'i wal mursalin syada la ilaha illallah syada Muhammadar Rasulullah. Today we are going to face the Idul Qurban in a very special moment amid the world pandemic, the COVID-19. So this is the first time in my entire life, and maybe most of us enduring the Qurban during the pandemic. So especially for people in Indonesia, this has become more special because the government of Indonesia has postponed the plan for the Hajj. And the only thing that we can do during the Idul Adha this year is praying the Eid prayer, and also giving the best udhiyah during the Idul Adha. So I want to share my perspective, and I will divide it into three parts. First one, I will share about the economic size of the Qurban itself. Secondly, I will share about the model that we develop in BAZNAS in Indonesia to sustain the impact of Qurban and the empowerment of the breeder or the farmers. And the last one is how we mitigate to reduce the opportunity or the possibility of the COVID-19 to be spread the Idul Qurban among the community by applying several standard and procedure. So first one, Qurban is an Islamic practice whereby the wealthy are required to sacrifice an animal to honor God as mentioned in the Quran Surat Al-Kautsar. So pray to your Lord and sacrifice to Him alone. The first reflects equality between prayer as a transcendental and a direct connection to God, and sacrifice as a diametric relationship among people through the distributions of meat and sharing of the economic impact through the livestock trading during the Qurban festival. BAZNAS and the University of Indonesia has established a research and calculate the size of the economy of Qurban in Indonesia is almost up to $5 billion. It is involving the trading of the cattle and other animals during the festive of Qurban. This huge amount of funds can potentially ease the poverty, especially in the village where most of the poor people living in the village work as a farmhands and shepherds. However, to achieve such goal, we urgently need to encourage urban Muslims to disperse their sacrifice animal to the village, not only sacrifice it doing the udiha in the urban area, but try to doing a campaign so that they will do the Qurban in a rural area where the poor need it most. So having said that, we can say that the Qurban itself has a huge potential to achieve the global sustainable development goals, especially at least for the goals to end poverty and to achieve zero hunger. But how to achieve that? So this is the second part. The model of the Qurban in Indonesia, especially, we can divide it into two different model. The first one is the conventional model. The conventional model is those that we already been experienced for years. So we focus on the slaughtering activities during the Idul Adha. So it's only about 3 to 4 days. We bring the cattle, we bring the goat, the sheep, and then we slaughter them, and then we do the meat distributions. By having this, it is yes, the poor can have the access to meat where outside the Idul Adha, they barely have the access to meat. But during this festival, they will get the meat as easy as they can go to the mosque. But having this model, it is not enough to alleviate the farmers from the poverty. Hence, BAZNAS and other zakat organizations in Indonesia create another model, which is establishing a livestock empowerment center. So this livestock empowerment center were built in the rural areas with the main focus of the empowerment of the farmers. Thus, they can play at least three roles in redistributing wealth. So the first, during the Idul Adha festival, this livestock center can raise funds from urban dwellers to purchase animals to play as an advocacy role in the market. As Brother Azim said, during the Qurban, a lot of organizations try to put the price lower and lower, so to attract more people to do the udhiyah in their organization. By having this model, we believe that it can empower the farmers by cutting the middleman, so that the most of the benefit will go directly to the farmers. So secondly, the role of the livestock center is to become a capacity building or a campus for the farmers outside the Idul Adha seasons. So outside the Idul Adha seasons, this empowerment livestock center will act as a training center that giving intensive assistance, such as organization capacity building, and then also technical things about to maintain the animals, so on and so forth. so that the farmers can have a better capacity or capability, and at the end we hope that they will have independence over several years, so that they can act as a group that more independent. And the third one, this livestock center can act as a way of wealth distributions, in the sense that giving, not only giving the money from the urban to the rural area, but also giving access for the farmers to get the best seeds in the market. So as we know that most of the farmers getting the seeds from their neighborhood, so they don't have the access for the real seeds for the livestock itself. So by having this, the livestock center can have corporations with other entities like research center, so on and so forth, so that they can give the best seeds for the farmers to be cultivated, to be maintained by the farmers. So this is second part of my perspective. The first, what I just said is we develop a model so that the Qurban can have a longer impact for the farmers by having the livestock center. The third one that I want to share regarding the coronavirus, there is several things that we need to mitigate. As we know that currently Indonesia now in the rank of 24th in the world for the positive cases of coronavirus, with more than 98,000 people were infected, and then more than 4,700 people were dead. So this is very serious, and then we already surpassing China several days ago in terms of the numbers of the coronavirus cases. So having the Idul Qurban amid the pandemic, in my perspective, I think we should mitigate two things. The first one is the purchase and selling activities, the trading activities among the communities. We should shift from traditional one to the online purchasing activities. Why we should move from the traditional one to online trading activities? Because in the traditional one, there is a opportunity that people are exposed to the virus by having one-on-one meeting, and it's largely open the opportunity to the virus to be spread among the community. But having the service online for the trading, it will help people to choose the best option that they have in the market. So BAZNAS now having already opened the service for the Qurban via online. We opened the cooperation with a lot of e-commerce, and then you can also buy it in the our website and so on and so forth. And it's very easy, and then it's very convenient. The second one, the thing that we should mitigate beside the trading activities is the slaughtering activities. We need to really careful and meticulously prepare for this one, because there is an opportunity people to gather during the Idul Adha and watching this activity without necessary needs, without any urgent activities that they will do during these slaughtering activities. So what we do, we have a capacity building for our partners who help us to do these slaughtering activities. We train them so that they will be equipped with several PPE, personal protective equipment, and then we build special slaughtering place so that it will prevent people from gathering in the area. And at the end, we will deliver the meat directly to those who needs, from one house to another, so that the people who need the meat do not need to come to the slaughtering center, but they just need to be in their house for social distancing to prevent the spread of the virus. So those are the 3 points that I covered. So the first one is the size of the economic Qurban is very huge to end the poverty and the hunger. And second one, we develop a model by having the livestock center so that it can give a long-lasting impact for the farmers. And the last one, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we should mitigate the spread of the virus during the trading and also the slaughter activities. Thank you.
Mashallah, thank you very much, Brother Randi, for your explanations on the models and the implementation of Qurban this year in Indonesia. So, dear audience, from our two speakers, we have learned that first, Qurban is about our spiritual relationship with Allah. That Brother Azim has explained before and has given several examples regarding how even though we are going through a pandemic, we shouldn't feel reluctant to do Qurban. Moreover, we should be even more motivated for doing Qurban. And second, from Brother Randi, we have heard several models and the mechanisms on how the implementation of Qurban is being implemented this year during the pandemic from the examples from BAZNAS of Republic of Indonesia. So actually, Brother Randi has already answered what I was going to ask for my first question, and that is regarding the strategy of zakat organizations within your respective countries in optimizing Qurban activities as a momentum to stimulate the country's economy in the midst of COVID-19. And so, because Brother Randy has already answered this question, maybe we'll move on to Brother Azim. You could explain to us how the Zakat organizations in your country are optimizing these activities and explain how the process is from the farmer level until the distribution of the Qurban itself. Brother Azim, you're still on mute? Okay.
Yeah. Jazakallah khair. Yeah, I just want to say, I guess it's a bit different for us because we are mainly in Europe and Western countries where, to be honest, I would say maybe less than 1% of Qurban is done local. Yeah. So generally, agencies in Europe, America, Australia, they tend to um, commission their Qurban services in the East, yeah, so and Africa. So here it's a very different situation. We now have smaller efforts to make Qurban local, but generally it's not practiced in the same way. And it was interesting how um, Brother Ari said earlier about how in the Indonesian context that with the cancellation of access to Hajj, this is something that the actual physical slaughter is something that has provided some, let's say, emotional and spiritual access to Hajj, at least for the community, the people, and that's it was a very, mashallah, it was a very nice observation. I really like that because I guess that's something we don't have legally here. There's many challenges about how animals are slaughtered, which is why technically it's not really done. And even when it's done here, it's done not by hand by the individual, but they may pay for the slaughter company to say, okay, you can choose the animal before it goes for slaughter. So unfortunately, we don't really have much to add to this discussion from a kind of a perspective of how the slaughter will be done and the impact of the because we are generally outsourcing that to Africa and Asia.
Okay, thank you very much, Brother Azim. So audience, we heard that from Brother Azim that because in Europe and or other Western countries, it is very different from maybe majorly populated Muslim countries on the mechanism of how they are going to implement Qurban in those countries. So as we heard from Brother Azim, that generally it is not practiced on the local level and is usually done by paying a slaughter company to practice their Qurban. So moving on to our second question is that taking a case from Indonesia, that even under the circumstances of a weakened economic state, the collection of zakat continues to grow. And in the midst of COVID-19 pandemic, do you think that there will be an increase in Qurban this year due to the community's increased awareness towards the economic conditions of low-income households during this pandemic? And however, taking also from a case from Indonesia, the which predicts that there will be a decrease in the number of Korban animals by 3.5%. So, what are your perspectives on this matter? Maybe first we will go to Brother Randi.
So thank you. It is true that the coronavirus has the real or real impact to the economy, especially in Indonesia. So I think it will give some shock with the fundraising for the Qurban. Maybe more people will hold their money compared last year to sustain their lives rather than not having the Qurban this year. But I think on the other hand, the motivations for people to do Qurban this year on the emotional side become more relevant, and then uh, uh, become more relevant in the economic terms as well, because a lot of people now drop to the bottom of the poverty line. And then it is very relevant to have these Qurban activities during this time, because it will help more people to give access for the food that maybe they barely have during the outside the Qurban. But however, we need to really seriously taking care of the methodology that we deliver to fundraise the money for the Qurban, and also to do the slaughtering activities in the local area. So having said that, uh, if the question said asked about the whether it will be high or how it will be, for me, in my perspective, it will be an impact, but those organizations that can adapt to the situations will really take a higher gain in these situations. Um, those organizations who have the infrastructure to do the Qurban, the fundraising of Qurban via online activities, I think they will get more benefit to give more services for the people. Secondly, I think the donators, those who pay for the Qurban, will selectively choose the organizations that have the standard and procedure in conducting the udhiyah during this pandemic. Why? Because they don't want to be involved to the risk of the spread of the coronavirus in the local community. As we know that the several cities in Indonesia, maybe in 8 provinces in Indonesia, it's still really high the numbers of the coronavirus uh, among the community. And then by having the Qurban without any serious mitigations and procedure, it will endure the community with a high risk of the spread of the virus. So I think the answer, those organizations who mitigate themselves with the infrastructure of the fundraising for the Qurban will gain more, and also the people who pay the Qurban will selectively the organization who have this service based on their capability to conduct the slaughtering based on the mitigation of the coronavirus disease.
Okay, thank you very much, Brother Randi, for your perspective. And maybe from Brother Azim, you would like to add?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and like I said, um, I personally think that in our market that Qurban will be up. Uh, I hope it will be up, inshallah. I think there's a lot of effort to remind people of the value of making udhiyah and making the Qurban. And I think, as Brother Randi had just mentioned earlier, about because people are not going for Hajj, there will be a whole community of people that had saved money, uh, that will be thinking, well, I couldn't make my Hajj this year, maybe I can make more sacrifice. Um, but I guess it's hard to predict just because we've seen things becoming increasingly more uncertain. It was mentioned earlier that Indonesia is number 25 in the world for coronavirus. I think the UK is number 3, yeah, or number 4. So obviously it's a very major issue here. Most businesses are still struggling to open. The government is still paying the wages for millions of people. So, but if we can say go by the example of Ramadan, which was obviously is not so long ago and was at the very height of the coronavirus, income across the board was generally up for zakat agencies and social welfare organizations. So if we were to look at Ramadan as a case study, and we would look at the Hujjaj that weren't able to go, then we would hope, inshallah, that we, at the very least, we will be the same as last year, but inshallah, we'll be up on last year.
Okay, thank you very much, Brother Azim, for your perspectives. And moving on to the next question, um, for Brother Randy, how would you include youth participation within the activities of Qurban here in Indonesia, knowing that usually many of the youth usually come and join in the process of the slaughtering of the animal and the distribution and so on. But since the coronavirus pandemic is happening right now, so that the activities are very limited. So how would you include youth within these Qurban activities?
So during this pandemic, we involve the youth mostly in the campaign activities. So we have several campaign activities. We do the Instagram live to inspire more youth to start thinking about Qurban, and for those millennials who already having the enough amount of money to pay Qurban, uh, we have the facility to for them to do Qurban easily. For example, in Instagram, we also make a filter in Instagram. It is like a game. So if you go to Instagram and you find out BAZNAS or Qurban online BAZNAS, you will have a game there, and then you can guess. You can answer to several questions regarding the Qurban, like what is the uh, how Islam see Qurban. It is wajib or sunnah or mubah, so on and so forth. And then what kind of animal that can be slaughtered during the Qurban, so on and so forth. So by having this kind of game, uh, we hope that more young people will engage with these activities. If they don't have enough money now, at least their parents will be exposed to this information. Secondly, we also have a collaboration with banks and then private companies to uh, to have a corporation to fundraise the Qurban. For example, with the banks, we open several bank account for those who want to having a Qurban account. If they don't pay the Qurban now, they do not do the Qurban now. They can do it for the next year or the next 2 years by having a strict plan using this bank account. And with other private companies, we also have a service whereby the human resource of the private companies can facilitate their employees uh, to spend several or yeah, several amount of money from their monthly payment for Qurban, and we will give them a service to slaughter the Qurban wherever they want to have the Qurban is slaughtered. So this year we have more than 24 province for the slaughtering activities covered, and then it is involving more than 80,000 families as the recipients of the meat of the Qurban. So how we involve the youth? Mostly we involve them in the campaign activities by having the social media exposure, and also giving them the facilities for paying the Qurban easily and conveniently.
Okay, thank you very much, Brother Andy. And yeah, personally, I have also tried this Instagram filter from BAZNAS, and I think my perspective is that it's actually very informative and it's really fun to use, especially that we know that the millennial generation nowadays are very active on Instagram, and that most of them take their information from Instagram. So yeah, I think these activities uh, through in campaigning from BAZNAS are pretty relevant for the youth generation. And now, maybe anything to add on from Brother Azim in your perspective, in including the youth in Qurban?
Yeah, like I said, because we really struggle here with being directly involved with Qurban. What you find here, the efforts are more about allowing people to understand why it's done. So maybe obviously the context is very different here. People have very little, often understanding of, why we do this. Um, what's the link between sacrificing an animal, yeah, and Hajj, and what's the link between sacrificing an animal and devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I think here the engagement is more around education and reminding people of the Sunnah of Ibrahim, but knowing that we don't have the ability to go and physically hand slaughter ourselves. So it's a bit more of a challenging environment like that. And I think for viewers that are generally across Western countries, this is one of the major consequences of lacking Islamic juristic systems and legal systems, because these things they're not allowed within the regulatory frameworks.
Okay, thank you very much, Brother Azim. Or maybe Brother Azim, would you like to share any other, say for example, experiences that you have had in maybe the UK or in Europe on what have you guys been doing during Qurban?
Yeah, like I said, our focus is more educative, and I think this is really important because generally across the world, with the rise of Snapchat, Instagram, social media, we find that we're increasingly just pushing a message and an advertising approach to just a cost competition and a price war that is unfortunately raging between agencies. I don't know how much of an issue it is in Muslim countries, but when you look at UK, US, Canada, Australia, Europe, you find all the main agencies are trying to offer similar deals, but somebody's trying to do a bit cheaper, 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 cheaper. And it's interesting. I saw some advertising here, which was one share of Qurban, and it was for £25. Yeah, and to put it into context, £25 is like getting 5 meals at McDonald's. Yeah, so like let's just say a family visit to McDonald's would be £25. So it uh, I think this is a problem that we need to address because I don't know in the Bahasa language, but like for example, the word Qurban in Urdu language, so the language spoken by Pakistanis and say a significant number of Muslim community in the UK, maybe at least a million and a half. Qurban means sacrifice, yeah, and in many languages, I believe Qurban keeps its meaning of sacrifice. But the problem is that when you bring a price war to sacrifice, it doesn't. It's almost
Nothing.
yeah. It's a paradox. How
Yeah.
can you make a sacrifice if you don't even feel it from your pocket? That's why we said that for us, the educative part is so key. That if Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam was willing to sacrifice his greatest resource, his greatest asset, which was the flesh and blood and the life of his son. And me and you are now discussing, shall we go to McDonald's or shall we pay for a Qurban? Yeah, it's losing the spirit of what this is meant to be about. There should be a feeling that when you make that payment, you feel that you couldn't do something else. It's almost that you should feel that you wanted to do something, and now because you made Qurban, you can't afford to do that. That would be a good feeling. That would be a good message. For example, if you're a family, and let's say the family they had planned to take a take a trip to a restaurant for Eid, or to take the family on a holiday park or something, and the father was to say or the mother was to say, this year we're going to increase the Qurban and we're going to pay for 3 animals, for example, and we're not going to go on that holiday, or we are not going to go to those restaurants because now we will have the money. This is something that will be a true sacrifice, and even though it's nothing like why the original sacrifice, at least we can as a families feel that something we let go for Allah's sake to make this happen for Allah's sake. And I think that's the challenge that what we are involved in, trying to educate people that let's not forget Qurban is not meant to be who has the cheapest deal. Qurban is meant to be something where you felt you made a Qurban. You were able to not do something because you didn't have the money, because you did this. So like I gave that example before of the person that he wanted to buy the best animal, or the persons that want to buy more animals, then this is good because it's meaning that they have less money for other things. I went to visit somebody yesterday and they had a stroke, you know, they had a
Yeah.
stroke. And obviously people will know this is a very difficult sickness. It involves a blood clot to the brain, and people, they become very unwell. They become paralyzed in parts of their body. And I went to visit this person yesterday, and they said that inshallah this year they will make 5 Qurban, 5 animals. And I was so happy to hear that, because even though they looked at it that now they are unwell, now that they are in difficulty, this is the best time to give more. So let's say normally they would give 1 or 2 animals. They said this year, inshallah, let's give 5. So this is the spirit that we want to communicate. We want others to be involved with. We want, the agencies, the social welfare people, BAZNAS, other major influencers, and even on social media, say, look, this year, when we are in so much trouble, when we are questioning why is Allah giving us this trial of coronavirus, just families being torn apart, people struggling with janaza, people having so many difficulties across the world, this year let's all try to do a bit more. So if usually you give 1 animal, this year you give 2. Usually you give 2, this year you give 5. Usually you give 5, usually you give 10. Or if you normally do a goat, try and do a cow. If you normally give a cow, try to do a camel. Whatever it is, let's all try to increase and use these days of Dhul Hijjah to do more and more and more. These are the best days in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you've already paid for your Qurban, and let's say maybe mashallah Indonesia, Malaysia, other Muslim countries, you've already bought your animals, maybe with just the intention of the Hijjah and trying to do more this year because of the fitan and the trial upon the world, buy another animal, or help someone with another animal, or go online if you want. Mashallah, I know Badna for many great facilities to take sadaqah and zakat and support other organizations like this. This is a good message, I think.
MashaAllah, these stories, they're very, they make you feel something. We know that Islam is all about love. Islam is all about giving to others and doing actions in the name of Allah. But during this pandemic, as we know that the economic toll has impacted all levels of society, not only towards Muslims but also towards non-Muslims. And so that understanding this certain situation and seeing that Qurban brings many benefits to all, do you think that the distribution of Qurban should only prioritize Muslims alone, or can non-Muslims who are also in need benefit from the distribution of Qurban? Maybe from Brother Azim first.
Yeah, this is a good question. I think this will probably be very different for us that are based in the West, and Brother Randi obviously in the East. I guess we generally don't look at it like that, because I guess udhiyah is a lot more. It's a lot more flexible in how you distribute the meat, because it's about helping. You have 1/3 to deal with the poor, for your neighbors, your family, etc. But I think the what you're alluding to is something much more wider, which is that as Muslims, how do we see our responsibility to Islam? And you started by saying that Islam is about establishing love and peace, and in all truth, I would challenge that to some degree. I think Islam is about establishing the understanding and the oneness of God in the minds of people, and from that comes love, peace, cooperation, mercy in our hearts. And I think that's why, if we as individuals and as communities use this opportunity to reflect on our faith, reflect on monotheism in the current time, and then use that to engage our neighbors, our friends, Muslim or not Muslim, it's really secondary. Because and maybe Brother Randi can give me some support here, but I'm saying generally you'll find that Muslims are in as much spiritual need as non-Muslims today. Muslims are troubled by peer pressure, by trying to look a certain way on Snapchat, by trying to buy certain things so they can show their friends on Twitter, and all these, just trying to keep up with dunya, has overcome Muslims just as much as non-Muslims. So the cure that we have, which is La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, is, to be honest, in our time, more just as needed as Muslims and non-Muslims. So I just think that our perspective needs to be that to educate people on the oneness of Allah, the Sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Sunnah of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. This will bring love, mercy, compassion throughout our communities, be they Muslim or not Muslim. And you can use, your funds and your udhiya and other things to help with that, because sometimes we look at things like very legally, from a very juristic perspective. Is this allowed? Is this not allowed? We should always be looking at this as that's important, yeah. But we should always be looking at how do we allow people to see the mercy of Allah in our work, be they Muslims or non-Muslims, because unfortunately Muslims are struggling with the same problems. And I think an unfortunate sign of this has been that the fear, and that I've seen anyway in a Western context, that the fear of coronavirus is no different in the Muslim brain and the non-Muslim brain today. And that is strange, because for the believer, it shouldn't be the case. For the believer, even any trial brings the mercy of Allah. But actually, the way we should have dealt with it should have been a bit different. The fear that we saw in the wider community, we shouldn't have had that fear. The way that people were, I don't know what happened in Indonesia, but here people were shopping, and you may have seen on YouTube, like filling their trolleys and emptying the shops. This was a reflection that there's something deficient in our understanding of Islam and our relationship with Allah, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ar-Razzaq. He is the sustainer of everything. Yeah, I think many of us, we lost this. So in response to your question, I think it's about really building the spirit of Islam and using Qurban and all our other wonderful traditions in Islam to call people, both Muslim and non-Muslim, back to what really matters, which is a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Brother Randi, if you would like to add.
Yeah, so to answer these questions, we can talk about the fiqh, and among the ulama there is a dispute with whether it can be distributed to the non-Muslim, or it doesn't allow to be distributed to the non-Muslim. But my point is, during this pandemic, we know that the effect of the coronavirus is very huge, and it very severe. It impacting the highest and the wealthiest man, and also the poorest one. And having said that, in BAZNAS, we realize the situations, and we enlarge the beneficiaries of the Qurbans in terms of the criteria. So there are at least three groups that are receiving the benefits of the Qurban in BAZNAS. The first one is the recipients of the meat. This is the most conventional one. So they're having a bag of meat during this Qurban, and then for each family, they will have it by our team will deliver it from one house to another. And the second group is the farmers itself. So during this Qurban, we want to make sure that the farmers getting the best opportunity to get the best price that they can get during this festival. And the third one, this is never done before. So we involve the community to having a model that we call as a cash forward. So there are a lot of layoff victims or SMEs that lost their sales, jobless people. We involve them to help us to prepare the meat and deliver it to the recipients from one house to another, and afterwards they will get cash. So by having this cash, they can sustain or can be happier, like for a week or for 2 weeks, by having this more income by joining our activities. So we do know that the impact of the coronavirus is very large. So we enlarge the recipients by having the third group, which is the cash forward. In this sense, these are people who are very vulnerable to the poverty. But maybe if we come back to your questions, to answer that is very contextual. In the Western countries, I think it more be relaxed, but here in Indonesia, I think most of the people living here are Muslims. So I think, and then there are also a lot of people that are impacted by the coronavirus. So yeah, back again, there are dispute in the among the ulama, but back to the context of each countries. But having said that, BAZNAS enlarged the benefits of the Qurban by having the third group, which is the cash forward recipients. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Randy. So, dear audience, we see that um, this distribution, it depends on the context also, and that as Brother Randy has explained to us also, that in Indonesia, the context may be different from what it is there in the UK or in Europe. So, Alhamdulillah, we have finally finished our session for today, and it was a very enlightening session, and inshallah will be beneficial for us all. So, what we can take from today's session is that Qurban should be the reflection of our relationship with Allah, and that we should not worry about it decreasing our wealth, but instead understand that as long as we believe in Allah and act in the name of Allah and give our best sacrifice, inshallah our lives will always be filled with barakah. That this pandemic we should see not as that we should actually see as Muslims as a trial from Allah, and that we should not worry as much, because from all trials we can see that from all trials and hardships that there will always be mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thank you for the speakers for today, Brother Azim and Brother Randi, for your time and wonderful insights. May we all have a blessed Eid al-Adha and see you on the next World Zakat Forum webinar series. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.